Welcome and good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for coming. We won't take much of your time. I would like to welcome you to the book launch of Dr. Sifiso Falala. I will not do an introduction on him. He's such a giant and a mighty man. I can't even begin to introduce him properly to you. We have Dr. Sifiso Falala, the author. We've got Mr. Sol Mulobi, who will be facilitating the book launch, the conversation, and he will properly introduce Dr. Sifiso Falala to us. I would like to note people that are within us, all protocols observed. If I do not introduce you properly to the room, may I be forgiven. I am a child. I'm still learning. I have noted Dr. Mahlangu, Ntokozo Mahlangu. He is one of our AGA brother and family. We've got Simon Katua all the way from Pretoria and all the way from Kenya. We welcome you, sir. He's in our midst. We've got Dr. Falala's family with us. We welcome you. Thank you so much. We have most important, Mr. Doron. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us the opportunity to host this special day in your place. He's the owner of the book dealers. He is here with his friends and his family. We welcome all of you. I hope you will enjoy this evening. It will be worthwhile. So our program is simple, straightforward. There is no program in front of you, meaning there's no program. It's the conversation between Dr. Falala and Mr. Mulobi. It's going to be 45 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A, 15 minutes. And exactly at past, I will do the vote of thanks, and we are going home. Tomorrow we're going to work. So please enjoy your evening. And we've been sponsored by our great friends. I will say great friends. Now I'm a friend of Doron from the Winelands is Mr. Lopez, right? So we appreciate them for the work that they have done. So please do enjoy the conversation. You have your questions ready. Keep them short, sharp, sweet, meaningful, impactful, relevant for this day. So thank you so much. I'll hand over to Mr. Sol Mulobi to introduce Dr. Sifiso Falala properly. Thank you.
Okay, I was saying that I'm not giving a speech because this is not a night of speeches. I'm just going to give a brief context within which we should situate this conversation that I'm going to have with Dr. Falala. During the turn of the first century, Pliny the Elder, a Roman philosopher, said, "Ex Africa semper aliquid novi." Basically, this means out of Africa, always something refreshingly new comes out. And then there is this construct of outside in, inside out. Basically, it says we had external stakeholders developing and narratives and framing narratives about the continent. That's an outside in. And we look at the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, the scramble for Africa. Then you look at 1899, Joseph Conrad with his book, The Heart of Darkness, dubbing Africa a dark continent. But then towards the 1890-something, then you see the emergence of a Pan-African movement. Here at home, you had Pixley Kaisakase during his graduation speech. He spoke about the regeneration of Africa. This was part of the Pan-African narrative to respond to colonialism. Then fast forward to 1963 in May, our forebears are convened in Ethiopia, 25th of May, then they launched the Organization for African unity. But the night before the 25th, Kwame Nkrumah spoke about the unification of Africa. There have been many challenges, and this unification narrative died down a bit until 1980 with the Abuja sitting of the special sitting of the African Union's heads of state and government. Then they adopt the Abuja Declaration that brought a structured mechanism for us to realize this unification. In fact, just before 1963, you also had a very, very patriotic voice emerging out of Chinua Achebe. He quoted W.B. Yeats saying, "Turning and turning into the widening gyre, the falcon cannot bear the falconer. The center cannot hold. Things are falling apart. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world." That was in 1958. But unfortunately, because of false sense of Pan-Africanism, we killed a sense of self-criticism. And I think adding to Pan-Africanism, you can add even nationalism, even ethno-nationalism. Even here at home, at one stage, the governing National Liberation Movement used to talk about the Festival of Ideas. But we know 10, 15 years ago, that construct of Festival of Ideas died down. There was no longer intellectual dissent. And it's for that reason that I feel very special today to be sitting here with Dr. Sifiso Falala, because he is that voice of reason that Africa needed. And the excitement, I would say, goes back to a few months ago after I received this copy. Now, this is the inside out approach that I'm talking about. We now have Africans giving a critical assessment of Africa, as opposed to having foreign intellectuals telling us about what our problems were, and even going to an extent of imposing solutions on us. So it's a privilege for me. And I'm not going to assume that all of us know who Dr. Falala is. He's a very humble person, and I'm a marketer. And I'm a brand architect, and I always say to people, humility doesn't sell. We have very excellent services and products that are not doing very well in the market because these brand owners are humble. They believe that a service, the quality of a service or a product has to sell itself. But my marketing textbook says 8% of your total budget should be allocated to you to marketing. And unfortunately, when we talk austerity measures, where do we cut? We target marketing and communications, forgetting that marketing is a revenue generator. So I know he may not be comfortable with me introducing him, but I'm going to do it, because I know he's the kind who will say, my book will speak for itself. And I've been in an instance where someone was introducing a VVIP somewhere, and he off-ramped a bit, And we saw a VVIP saying to him, stick to the script. So I'm going to stick to the script. And it's a very short script, don't worry. Dr. Sifiso Falala is the founder and CEO of Plus 9094 Research, one of South Africa's leading independent market research companies, established in 1998. He also founded the Sovereign Africa Ratings, a firm providing sovereign and sub-sovereign rating services, and serves as the president of the Pan-African Media Research Organization. He has previously chaired the Southern African Market Research Association and is a member of the European Society for Opinion and Marketing Research. In addition to his research ventures, he founded Priority Performance Projects in 2020, a company aimed at advancing development and economic growth in the developing world. Triple P focuses on identifying and executing priority projects that optimize resources for the benefit of developing nations, emphasizing stakeholder engagement, process design, financing, and monitoring. Dr. Falala is also the founder of the African Genius Awards, which celebrates African excellence and promotes initiatives that reshape Africa's global narrative. He authored this book, and we are here tonight to engage with him on this book. But let me alert you, we are not going to go into the contents of the book because we want you to buy the book. We are just going to give you teasers to motivate you to buy this book. Dr. Falala holds a PhD in Management of Technology and Innovation from the Da Vinci Institute, a Master of Science in Population Studies, and a Bachelor of Business Studies with honors. His expertise spans market research, technological innovation, and African development, with a focus on actionable insights and performance-driven solutions. That's our author. There's another reason why I'm reading this profile. I know of late we rely a lot on Gramsci. We end up dubbing everyone an organic intellectual. This is not an organic intellectual. This is an intellectual. He doesn't need that adjective to say he's organic. And most of us who are positive Pan-Africanists and those we dub Afro-pessimists, we often shout slogans. Not tonight. Tonight we are going to refrain from chanting slogans, and we are going to get substance, the kind of substance that is contained in this excellent book. Dr. Falala, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. We are here tonight. Your journey, and I know your journey and what you have shared with us in your book is also based on your lived experience across the continent. Take us about this journey. Your sleepless nights, what motivated you to write this book, and also why this provocative title, Africa Defeats Itself.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I think the ambassador is very formal in the way in which he articulates ideas and presents himself, and he has made a generous offer of describing me as a very humble person. The alternative to which is, I suppose, arrogance. And as soon as I know the benefit of that, I might actually try and practice some of it. I hope everyone can hear me at the back. So, Ambassador, how Africa defeats itself. The question is, I think everyone, because we all love the continent, that's why we're here, everyone would like to know, is Africa defeated? Very often I find it impolite to say yes. Nonetheless, I think it's a more accurate answer, and I'll explain why. I think of the people that live under the poverty line throughout the world. 8 out of 10 of them are in Africa. And 400 million people in Africa out of the 1.5 billion live below the poverty line. And if you look at the fact that Africa contains such a huge tract of land, it is massive. Within our continent, you can fit in India, all of the United States, all of Europe, all of China. They can all fit into Africa. And yet you see other countries that are relatively much smaller than Africa having a higher GDP than Africa. Africa, and I'll use South Africa because we are all South Africans, so you can relate to that. South Africa, for instance, has a GDP of about $450 billion a year annually. Let's compare to a country that is 22,000 square kilometers in size. What do you think is the size of South Africa? South Africa is 1.2 million square kilometers. In other words, if you take a country like Israel, for instance, it goes into South Africa 55 times. 55 times. And yet, this small country that was founded in 1948, on the 14th of May, has a GDP that is higher than that of South Africa. South Africa had been around even as a country before 1948. The average person that works in Israel is 8 to 10 times more productive than a South African. All right? Well, that sounds very complicated. That sounds grand. That sounds confusing. But also, our continent has a total, despite having 30% of the world's natural resources, including palladium, including all the things that go into EV batteries, including gold, platinum, diamonds, iron ore, forests, all of these things, despite all of these things being in Africa, Africa is not a third of the world's GDP, as the resources would suggest it should be. A third of the world's GDP would be approximately $33 trillion a year. Africa is only $3 trillion a year and has a GDP that is smaller than that of Germany, equal to that of India. I'm talking about a continent compared to countries, and smaller than that of Japan, smaller than that of the US, smaller than that of China. So yes, one can say with confidence and data that we are defeated in that sense. Can we win? Can we bounce back? Yes, but can we bounce back without addressing the reason why we are where we are? We cannot. And that's why the book is written, because we want to bounce back. So why was the book written? Because the defeat is manifested on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. I see it, we see it, you see it, Ambassador. Just this week, in fact, Bafana were delayed to go to the United States. Just this week, Bafana were delayed to go to the United States. Okay? I'm not talking about people who do not have the capability. I'm talking about people who can apply for visas. People who have known all along that there's a World Cup coming and could have organized it. But of all the teams in the world, Bafana Bafana had to be delayed. Not only that, Bafana almost missed out on qualification because they played an illegible player, because the player had a yellow card and was disqualified and should not have played in one match, and some points were deducted. Thank God we still qualified. Now, simple question. If you needed 100 points to win the World Cup in the US, and you all started with 100 points, Bafana already on 80 points. Because we don't know if there'll be water at their hotel. We don't know if they'll be able to check in, if everyone will have a room at the hotel when they arrive. And we don't even know if the uniforms are going to arrive because of the sort of things that are happening. So, yes, we are defeating ourselves. We are defeating ourselves. Ambassador, this is not on its own enough to write a book. Safe to say that we're a nation also where we are watching on television every day. There are things that are in the book that are historic, that go back to 3 million years ago to Lucy in Ethiopia, where we begin to argue that life began in Africa. The first export from Africa was humanity itself. It wasn't gold, diamonds, and other minerals. It was people. But let's come to the now. You have a situation where almost every second person that is employed in public service creates a side hustle, regardless of whether they're a policeman, police officer, sub-commissioner of police, and they work with criminals. And they actually make it impossible to protect people because you watch every day on television a police officer, a senior police officer, conniving with drug lords. We are defeated. There is no way you can come back from that. We have to correct that. You cannot come back from a situation where you can no longer trust the law. There are other things. So I work in a research environment, as the ambassador has highlighted. And in a research environment, what we do is we try and establish a reason for manifested behaviors that are seen in real life, in real time. And as far as Africa is concerned, through the research that I was doing for this book, I have failed to find the reason for the things that we do, to understand why we do what we do. There are two concepts that I'd like to plant in your minds. The first concept is that of manifested behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs that we have. Some of them become so confusing, I struggle to understand them. The second concept is that of benchmarks that we use to benchmark ourselves, as well as stereotypes that we use to assess our own successes and our own failures. In research, we set out to communicate a certain hypothesis or a thought process that says the reason for this could be that. With Africa, all the things that I've alluded to now, it's very difficult to understand why they're happening without beginning to suggest that maybe our actions are illogical. So why do we have this book launch? We have this book launch because I would like to understand, maybe from everyone during question time, why is there nothing that is being done about this? When you observe on a daily basis, people complain about the weather. People complain about sniffing. I have a dry throat. People complain about the traffic. People will complain about the long hours at the office. People will complain about noise at the mall, but not about Africa. Note about the fact that the richest continent in the world is also the poorest. This is the elephant in the room, the biggest conundrum. There's a theory that I discuss in the book that is called the bystander effect, whereby we have all become bystanders in our own predicament. Apart from that, we have also decided to make ourselves victims. And I think, let me, as an introduction, create this suspense and kind of leave you in a suspensive mood as to why this bystander effect is in place. And if we all saw the roof of this building collapsing, would all run out, isn't it? Would all scream and run out. But in Africa, no. If you see the economy collapsing, if you see the minerals leaving, if you see the African continental trade area not working for so many years, if your leaders say that we will fix this by the year 2063, you just say it's okay, you just carry on. And then we have the internet, where on the internet, Ambassador, 50.8 or 0.9 South Africans have access to the internet. Between 28 and 30 million have access to WhatsApp, and they use it on a daily basis. Now, on that basis, we are all informed. Try and assess what South Africans are discussing online. They are not discussing this thing called dereliction of African assets or dereliction of economic duty, dereliction of what Africa is calling us to do, ignoring and being comfortable splendidly with the poverty in Africa. No. What are the things that are trending? I did research on this. Humor and comedy. Humor and comedy are trending on the internet. Fine, we all want to laugh at times, but they trend all the time. They spend 9 hours on the internet. I'm talking about the youth now. Humor and comedy are number one. What is number two? Gossip and celebrities. Right? So you have a whole raft of the youth of this country that is not interested in the list in agriculture, in mechanization of the production of food, in participating in industries that can radically transform the extent to which Africa is a breadbasket for the world, or South Africa is a bread. They are not interested. Try and write an article and post it now about how to enter into agriculture, how to enter into mine. You'll have 2 or 3 views if you're lucky. Enter a little bit of a joke and a celebrity that is about to break up with another celebrity. Then you have 1 million views. This is what is very unusual. This is very unusual. It's like the whole continent has been under anesthetic. Like we actually can't respond. We are completely paralyzed to the issues that we should be addressing. So it is a huge problem. That's why I wrote the book, because I just cannot understand why we accept the fact that we have so much poverty, we have so much inequality, and yet there is absolutely nothing that we are doing towards that particular predicament every day. It has become normalized.
Hello. That's very hectic. We laugh about the incompetence of Bafana management, who knew that we qualified a while back and we were going to need visas to be in Mexico and the US or Canada. And then you have these problems. I would say to a large extent, I have about 20-year experience in the public sector. And I'm not necessarily saying this problem it's only in the public sector. It is also there in the private sector. We suffer incompetence, but incompetence comes as a result of patronage. You appoint me a minister today, you appoint me a CEO of a state-owned entity today. I dish out patronage to my own people. And later on, we have service delivery problems, we have these blunders, and we wonder why. I said I'm a marketer. A branding intervention is necessary when what you communicate as your vision isn't operationalized or it doesn't find expression in your organizational culture and experience. What we say as South Africa, this is who we are, and we have brilliant policy documents. We have the world's best constitution. But when you look at us as South Africans, what we do in the private sector, in the public sector, even in the civil society sector, you then realize that we are not actually geared to achieve this vision that we have set for ourselves. And then from there, we will complain. Branding rests on the third leg, which is brand image, how external stakeholders perceive you. And we will then concentrate on that and take exception to the negative perceptions that people have of us. But if we do self-criticism, we laugh at ourselves because exactly these negative perceptions that persist are real. In the book, you nearly went to it, and I was praying you shouldn't go deeper into it because I want us to focus on it. Usually when the outsiders, remember I spoke about the outside in, how external stakeholders perceive us and how they communicate who we are. Then we respond by presenting ourselves as victims. And in the book, you strongly condemn this victim mentality that permeates across the continent. I was happy 2 weeks ago when there was the Africa-France summit in Kenya. Tony Elumelu emphasized this, that it's high time that as Africans, we stop seeing ourselves as victims. So I'm not going to steal anything away from you because you articulated it so eloquently in the book.
The issue of victimhood bothers me a lot and is explained elegantly and in some detail in the book. The problem with being a victim is that who is not a victim of something? We don't have to over-exaggerate the fact that we've suffered. Let's look at how other nations dealt with their suffering. For goodness sake, the Japanese even suffered 2 atomic bombs, one at Nagasaki and the other one at Hiroshima. But their economy is amongst the top 3 in the world today. And as I mentioned, Israel did not even exist in 1948 at the beginning, but now they are there. I have friends from all nations, and I asked one of my Jewish friends, what do you think of what happened, talking about the Holocaust? He said, we told ourselves never again. Now, it's one thing to be complaining about being a victim, but we haven't told ourselves never again. We haven't said to ourselves never again. In everything that we are doing, it's ever again. We're actually getting ourselves into a position where we are getting ready to be colonized again and again and again. So this is the problem that I see. The problem with victimhood is that it doesn't have a time stamp. You have something called the victimhood competition theory, where people compete to be the best victims. So the ones that suffered the most, like they have the most amazing stories of what happened to them, they end up as president and ministers because they are competing to show off their scars. We should not be competing to say that we are the worst or the best victims. Another theory, which is called typecasting theory, is a morality theory, suggests that there are two schools of thought. The one is you have morality agency, which says that there are people who have the agency to either do good things or bad things, to either create victims out of others or make heroes out of others. And then you've got another group, they are called the morality victims or patients. They cannot create agency, they can only be patients, they suffer from victimhood. To even declare oneself as a patient of victimhood, there's something wrong with that. To say that I'm the leading victim in the world, there's something fundamentally wrong with that. What are you doing with that? Nobody is there to look after you or to protect you. You are there to look after yourself. So when you look at some of the things that we have alluded to, we, the victims, or the ones that refer to themselves as victims, are responsible for heinous crimes against humanity, heinous crimes against other people. So the issue of humanhood, of victimhood, bothers me greatly, and I've dealt with it quite extensively, and I think it sits at the heart of all of our problems. We need to grow up. We need to stop seeing ourselves as the people to whom things get done. Oh, they did this to us, then they did. Of course they did. Anyone would. At night, if you don't lock your doors, they'll come and steal. They did this to the... So we are the people to whom it gets done and done and done again. So we are always the object and not the subject. Why do we allow ourselves to always be the object of things that are being done? What have we done? You cannot sit there that everything that ever happened was done to me. I didn't do anything. The fact that you are not doing anything, either good or bad, becomes a problem. So the issue is that we need to take responsibility. The tides will come. Yes, colonialism was bad. Yes, slavery was terrible, and I got details of that. But we need to say never again. And we can see Rwanda had the genocide not so long ago. But now you look at Kigali, it's being referred to as the Singapore of Africa. You look at countries like the UAE, all desert, but look at where they are today. Look at South Korea. Look at where they were, nowhere 50 years ago, but where are they now? So everyone has been under the cosh. We do not have an excuse.
Yeah, in the book, it's not all doom and gloom. There are also opportunities that Africa needs to take up, to move away from self-defeating its. Now, let's look at those opportunities and the opportunities we missed and the opportunities that are still there that we need to grab as Africa to ensure that we are on a developmental trajectory.
Yes, there are some bright sparks. For example, in Ethiopia, just recently, they embarked on this green energy initiative where they have solar panels all over the world and wind energy. Ethiopia is a fantastic story. Even if you look at Ethiopian Airlines, the way in which they are managing that particular airline has become a flag bearer for the continent. And then you've got Ghana, which is beginning to lead in areas related to fintech and also just technology in general. And in East Africa countries such as Kenya, they are beginning to emerge as doing some fantastic work. So it's important to realize that the next looming battle that I see is not, and that's also in the book, is not between Africans and non-Africans. The looming battle is between African winners, people that understand that they have to work hard, they have to compete with the rest of the world, that are talented. We have a young population on the continent. We have a lot of consumers on the continent. We have raw materials. We have talent. We have educational institutions. We can convert those educational institutions from missed opportunities to realize potentials. We can develop our energy sector. We can invest in our youth. We can transform the way that education is being delivered and deliver necessary education. So we're beginning to see the part of the middle class that says, that's not us. We are very different. We want to walk a different path, beginning to emerge. And certainly the utilization of the resources together with the African intelligentsia that is moving and shaking and changing things, not just here, but also worldwide, presents a worthwhile opportunity. The biggest challenge is that they will face the biggest challenge from the victimhood sector, because they are going to say, you're arrogant, you're a coconut, you do not understand, you were not in the struggle. So the biggest challenge for the African winners is actually going to come from the African victims, because they'll say, you don't understand the issues. But at the moment, as things stand, we are seeing a lot of opportunities for Africa to grow. And the vibe within the continent and what we are seeing within the African Union, I was there today, is that the prospect for growing the African economy is beginning to look very bright.
Who started writing this book, you had your own ideas how you were going to embark on this journey. And you identified a number of philosophies that you expanded upon in this book. That impacts on you as a writer. And my experience is that by the time you finish writing that book, even though I always say to people, a book is never finished. It's only finished when it goes to print. but then after that, then you can still continue writing another book that builds on that one that you have written. And it's simply because all those philosophies impact on you. Your engagement with those philosophies impact on you. By the time you put your last full stop, you are a completely different person. Now, tell us about the Dr. Falala when he first wrote his first sentence in this book, and the Dr. Falala who put the last full stop on this book and said, now it can go into production.
Yeah, I started writing this book in 2010, so it's been in the works for a long time. And I published it under a pen name in 2011. And I published it also on Amazon, but I was very angry, and I think you can see that I'm very emotional about these issues. But I was very angry when I wrote it, so it was impolite, and I felt since I'm in corporate and a businessman, I might be victimized. So I wrote it under a pen name. I used that book to exercise my anger. And I later decided, obviously 15 years later, one gets more mature, let's just leave it at that. And then I later decided to write it under my name and to tone it down a little bit. The first chapter, for instance, in 2011, it was there. I still have copies at the office. I had concluded that it's not possible that we do exist. So the first chapter was questioning whether, in fact, as Africans, we do exist. The reason for the question was I could not believe that someone could exist with the potential we have and do nothing. The conclusion I arrived at is no, we are not here. We are dreaming. We will wake up one day. So, and to this day, parts of me still question whether we have substantive existence. Because if you have subsistence existence and you see a little toddler crawling towards a pool, you're going to run and stop it if the pool has no net, right? We don't do that. So we're not there. So I felt angry, and I think 15 years later, like 12 years later, when I started writing, the anger had subsided. But talking about it now, I feel relieved. I'm glad that I've managed to get my thoughts out to the world and to correct the record and to say that Africans by nature are loving people. I feel that now I'm in a stronger position to love every person, every human being from whichever part of the world, because every human being has got a stake in Africa. Every human being matters and every human being counts. So I think what I've learned out of it is the need for humanity to tolerate, for us to tolerate each other and to love one another and to accept that we need each other as people. So the book was very helpful in helping me to develop some of those warm and fuzzy values that I so badly needed to connect with as a human being.
Opportunities that are there for us to grab. And basically, it's up to all of us in here to grab these opportunities. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, it's a continental integration project that we should all pursue, and even a civil society and individuals put pressure on our governments to buy into it. But it's proceeding very well, because out of the 55 member states of the AU, 54 have already signed it, 48 have ratified it. And yes, every family has one. The one in our family is Eritrea, which still has to sign and ratify it. But in his opening, he spoke about our GDP, which is only a combined GDP, which is only 3.4 trillion. But with all these opportunities and our mineral endowment, we should be able to increase our combined GDP. And this could happen through intra-African trade, because the AFCFTA removes up to 90% of the tariffs, which means then that we will have price as our competitive advantage when we export into other African countries. It's an opportunity that we need to grab. I'm still a bit angry. Sometimes, for instance, if you look at take example of Tanzania, Zambia, Angola corridor, that basically says there'll be a rail and road infrastructure developed from Tanzania through Zambia to Angola. Basically, is the same colonial model of extracting our mineral resources through DRC to Angola, meaning then they go into the West. And you also have Zambia, Tanzania corridor. Our minerals are then extracted and exported as raw materials into Asia. This makes me angry, because we have skills and intellectual capacity across the continent to beneficiate these minerals before we export them. But again, how do we do that when our TVET colleges are in ICU. How do we do that when our children are socialized to believe that they need to get academic university education as opposed to getting artisanal skills from technical colleges? In fact, I'm angry that when we're building Medupi Power Station in Limpopo, we had to import welders from South Korea because our technical colleges produce welders who build burglar gates and windows. They are not technical welders, who can put together an electronic board. So these are the missed opportunities that this book addresses. And if we read this book, we should be able to go to governments across the continent to say, this is what we need to do. But as they say, charity begins at home. It starts with you buying this book, sharing it with your family, then your neighbors, your community, then your province, your city, your province, the country, and the whole continent. Thank you so much, Dr. Falala. I'm now going to open the floor for questions. And I have a friend in the audience who's very happy that you started writing this book 15 years ago, because I've been condemning him for having taken 10 years to come up with a masterpiece. So he's going to quote you to say, look at Dr. Falala. He also took 15 years. There he is. Leslie Deacon. Okay. Questions, colleagues? Two from the back.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Program director, you said questions must be short, sweet, impactful, and then I'll try to keep to the script. But it's going to be worth for me to give context before I ask the questions. I work in an education sector at a school level, and this school is one of the schools that have been adopted by the doctor, diplomat, through his education village venture. He has committed a lot of resources, almost R1 million, into improving the standard of education, maths and science. But now, that was just to give the context, because I'm going to pose this question to the doctor. Diplomat and the doctor, you spoke of two things. First, I want to marry these things and just as background to my question. Victimhood mentality. And then the doctor had said that some of us, we commit the most heinous things, yet we see ourselves as victims. As an adult South African who understands the background of our country, we know the atrocities that have been committed by one against the other. And then you spoke of the second thing to say, when you go into social media, the first thing you find is humor. The second is gossip. I want to add the third, which will now point to my question, is self-hate or hate for other Africans in this country. I work in a classroom where, as a person who's perceived to be a past victim, I'm supposed to educate an African child to understand that you are not better off if you are going to commit such heinous things to other Africans. And yet, what we see in social media, what has permeated social media, that self-hate for other people. What has the doctor got to say? For the person who has invested so much into the education space, how are we defeating Africa in the classroom by not educating our learners about not to hate each other, to understand that Africans, we are one as Africa. Ambassador has just spoken about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And I listened to former President Peggy at Africa Day saying, what if that succeeds? But what if our goods go into market and the rest of African countries get to say, we don't want products from South Africa because they hate other Africans? what has the doctor got to say, looking at what is happening, the negative discourse in social media, speaking about the deadline of the 30th of June, wanting to expel other Africans. As a teacher, what is your message that I take back to the classroom, doctor, to teach that young African child there to say, we are Africans, and this hate for other Africans is in actual fact self-hate. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Falala, for the book and taking time to think about Africa. My question to you will be, Africa is divided according to colonization in different languages. So there is a language that dominates our continent. The language came from Europe. And the three languages that I will remember is English, French, and Portuguese. The only country is speaking Spanish is Equatorial Guinea. I've heard the ambassador talking about the project that will link the corridor of Lobito from Tanzania, Zambia, DRC up to Angola. They call it the corridor of Lobito. But my asking to you, this book will help a lot of young people, more especially the generation to come. Is it possible to put it at least in 3 languages? If it can be in English, French, and also in Portuguese, that will cover the entire continent. That someone, a young person, one day can come across and read this book that will help this continent. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Dr. Falala. I'm going to be a bit dissenting. I hope you take it as the corollary to the impassion that you gave us here as well. And I think this gentleman's question kind of leads well into what I wanted to ask you. It's under the theme of kind of constructive criticism. This gentleman speaks about your book needing to have availability across 3 languages, potentially a 4th if we add Spanish, on the African continent, which illustrates quite poignantly that Africa is not a monolith. A lot of the examples that are given to say, look at what these guys did, are in spaces that are uniform, and we lack the uniformity that allows for a linear extrapolation of things. So then it starts to feel like we ourselves are actually importing the outside in analysis. There's a feminist called Audre Lorde that says, the master's tools can't be used to dismantle the master's house. And it feels like that's what we're trying to do. We're fitting ourselves into regression models around size, availability of commodities, and what we should be making and beneficiating into a space that perhaps doesn't conform to that model, particularly in how big it is. The continent is huge, and perhaps our value is not in the capitalist model, which I think, for all intents and purposes, is rather destructive in a general way than it is productive. Or rather, it limits the production to a very few set of people. So my question, in kind of the theme of constructive criticism, is, in what ways do you find capitalism hurts us or disenfranchises us, structurally speaking? Or perhaps, in what ways does capitalism help Black people, African people, I guess, to get out of the plight that, ironically, capitalism created?
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm Leslie Tikeni, an author and sociologist. First of all, congratulations. Not easy to write. People think it's easy. Yeah. It took years, as Saul said. Yeah, it takes years, it does. So congratulations for that. Mine is to congratulate you. And yet at the same time, I really would have wanted to read, the back copy of the book because I think I'm hijacked by Saul here to come. Yeah, I was really hijacked. I should have prepared longer. And that's a problem anyway. When we launch books, we have to end up having to listen or speak at the level of what we have not read ourselves. No, then the critique or the praise cannot be well. But there's one praise. It's the fact that we have produced that, and we need more to produce. So I move from that position. So my question is going to be very generic, but yet maybe you might have in your book be able to help me, right? But I think somehow you are dealing with this from a historical perspective, right? Am I right? There's history there in what I've listened to. So I will cite Thomas Kuhn on the structure of the scientific revolution. Paradigm lost, paradigm regained, right? So in your historical narrative that we are producing or giving out, I would say, did you take into connection the question of history cannot be read as if we are driving on a highway, right? But that there are continuities and discontinuities in a historical process, right? In our history, for example, I think we are very, very critical that we should not be, what the word you use, blamed, right? Blame thinking and so on and so on and so on, right? So I think if you look at that, sometimes I blame myself for many things because of my historical life history. Do I have to blame myself? Yeah, I'm trying to ask the question is that, can you explain to us this non-blaming of ourselves? Why should we not blame ourselves? Because I think it's self-critical on the one end. Secondly, it is precisely that discontinuity and continuity in a historical process that I'm trying to ask you to respond to. Can explain to us in your historical analysis, are there ruptures, disruptions in that historical process that will explain to us in what we are giving to us as a narrative in the book? So I'm sorry, thank you.
We look forward to interacting with you more in future. I'll go straight into the questions. On education, my colleague there from Moletsane High School in Soweto, it's one of the painful areas that I feel a lot could have been done to make a difference. First of all, I don't agree with the education syllabus completely. Because if I look at the primary school, even the high school education syllabus, it does contain first language or mother language, second language, mathematics, natural sciences. Then you have what is called, it's about life learning, life skills, life orientation. Now, I've tried to make representations to the Department of Education to no avail. Education is a cure for existing problems. Our education should have lessons on citizenship, morals, and ethics, because that's the biggest problem. Respect and dignity. Those are the things that we need to be teaching at school. And there are things that we teach kids that do not make a difference in their lives, and they end up on drugs, on nyaupe, they end up on the streets being victims of crime, perpetrating crimes themselves, because the education did not address the history that my brother was referring to. So I think the education syllabus needs to be analyzed in the sense that most of the youth are unemployed. Some of them are actually unemployable. And then with regards to the African Afrophobia, I do think that the problem is with, we're not locating the problem where it is. You must remember that the Africans that are in South Africa illegally, they are running away from an African leader in another African country. That African leader that they are running away from is bosom buddies with our African leaders that are doing nothing about illegal immigration. In fact, they have parties and celebrations. They call themselves Liberation War Heroes or whatever they call themselves. They don't talk about these things. So the problem needs to be located where it is, which is a failure of government incompetence, dereliction of duty, creating a hustle out of jobs at border gates, creating a hustle out of jobs at the airport. So that's where the problem is. We need controls. We definitely need to have measures in place to ensure that South Africans are safe and they are protected from people that might come, not just out of desperation, but with the intention of carrying out criminal activities in South Africa, which not everyone, some of them do. So in terms of teaching the real story, my view of this is rather disappointing in the sense that I don't think as Africans in South Africa we are different to Africans elsewhere. We are exactly the same. What is embarrassing to me is that South Africa is the only country with a significant white population in Africa. And it appears to me like we're trying to protect our white people, keep them to ourselves, and keep them away from other Africans. Because there's nothing that an African that is in Kenya, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia cannot do that we can do. So for me, it's very embarrassing because I don't understand. We are all the same. We need to improve our teaching when it comes to social sciences and social studies. We need to incorporate the lectures about ethics, morality, and humanity. So let me stop there and say that the issue of government incompetence is the one that is responsible for this, as it is responsible for everything else that we see. And then the lack of uniformity and outside-in analysis and the view about capitalism. I don't think that the ism that we use matters. What matters is how competent we can be in delivering that particular ism. For example, President Julius Nyerere, when he came into power in Tanzania, he declared himself to be a socialist, and he implemented a system of cooperatives called Ujamaa villages, where he tried to create among subsistence farmers cooperatives throughout. That failed dismally, notwithstanding the support from the likes of the IFC, notwithstanding support from the World Bank. It failed. There are other countries that are pro-Marxism, like Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Zambia, some of which are the reason why we have illegal immigrants in here. So it's not about the ism that you follow, it's about the delivery and the competence that is employed. So the fact that we've got so many people shouting in Parliament, even yesterday, that we should move away from neoliberalism, we should go into Marxism or capitalism or socialism, does not guarantee that those systems will work, especially when we know they didn't work in Zimbabwe, they didn't work in Zambia, they didn't work in Mozambique. Why are we thinking that they're going to work in South Africa? What matters is, in China, they are not a capitalist. They practice state capitalism where the state is the capitalist. What matters is, can you deliver efficiently, ruthlessly, meticulously to whatever project you are running, whether it's capitalism or socialism. This ism that is being bandied around, that we just need to adopt socialism, everything is going to be okay, is nonsense. Why would it be okay? Because it's socialism. If we do it and we do it well, it's going to be okay. But if we do it for the sake of it, it's not going to be okay. And then the final question is, I think, Jean-Pierre, you asked about language. Certainly, we would be open to translating the book into other languages. Self-critical blame. I think we should introspect. I tried to check in isiZulu what introspection is, and the word was not accurate. I asked my wife, who's Tswana speaking. I think in Tswana they have a more accurate word that describes introspection. And I do deal with a section that says that how can we become introspective if we do not have a word for it? So you need to first have a word for being introspective in order to understand the concept and deal with it. So I started arguing, and I was in the process of beginning to write another book where I started to say maybe some of these problematic concepts like introspection might be foreign concepts. You find in isiZulu, as anyone can answer me, what is accountability in isiZulu? Yini accountability? isiZulu accountability. What is accountability in Zulu? At times you find you need a whole sentence to actually explain a simple concept like accountability. And you find people are not accountable because it's a foreign concept. And therefore you are saying, if you don't have that word in your own language, that's where, my brother, Mulitsane High School comes in. And they say, we have realized that we don't have accountability. We don't have efficiency. We don't have competence. Competence is not fast. Competence is not uyakwazi. Competence is not wenza kahle. Competence is competence. So this is where we then begin to define those words and bring them into the education syllabus. So there's a lot of work still to be done. So thank you very much. Maybe if I can just ask the ambassador to close. Apologies for that.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. No? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Funeka. The brains behind this gathering, and our birthday boy, Dr. Falala. And thank you, the audience. If you go through the book, you will find many ideas that respond to the challenges that we are facing. I'm very passionate about education. I'm a failed teacher, in fact. But I'm very passionate about, I was supposed to be a teacher. I off-ramped. But every year, we register about 1.2 learners for grade 1. 12 years later, only 780 roughly thousand write matric exam. Between grade 10 and 12, there's a 40% dropout rate. Then you come to primary. Research has shown that our grade 5 learners have numeracy and literacy skills for grade 3. Our maths literacy is very low. And that's why we recruit teachers from Zimbabwe. I agree with Dr. Falala. Our education system is in a mess. In 1996, when we were introducing outcomes-based education, and we adopted it straight from the UK, we made a mistake. We could have just gone to Zimbabwe, which adopted it in 1980, and they've since perfected it and customized it to an African condition. And that's why at one stage Zimbabwe had the best education system, believe it or not, in Africa. And that's why even today, our best maths and science teachers are from Zimbabwe. The Minister of Education 3 weeks ago said 400 schools in South Africa has stopped teaching mathematics. Now, we are talking about growing our economy. If we do not have maths and science students, it means we won't have engineering students who will then come and drive infrastructure development in the country. These are the missed opportunities and that the book is talking about that we need to take up. I'm just going to be naughty. During the COVID lockdown, and by the way, COVID is back. Minister Paksta, who yesterday was diagnosed with COVID. So, meaning those huggies after this, we should do them very cautiously. But we took 469 million and we sanitized schools that were closed. Then AfriForum took 300 million. They built an Afrikaans medium university. We spent 469 million to sanitize closed schools. These are the kind of things that should make us angry. And we need to revolt against our leaders. With Pan-Africanism, the AU has a protocol on free movement of persons. So far, since 2018, it has just been ratified signed by 32 countries, ratified by only 3. But if you look at East Africa, East Africa is integrated. The nationals, they just use their ID books or cards to travel in between. Here in the south, Botswana and Namibia did that 2 years ago. And by then I was naughty. I appreciated, but I also said, by the way, their combined population is less than the population of Soweto, so that's why they can manage it. But we have just done it with Lesotho. Lesotho nationals only need their IDs, and we also need our IDs. So integration is coming, but we are also saying immigration has to be legal. But in the meantime, let's force our governments to sign and ratify the free movement of persons to facilitate integration. One of our foreign policy principles is people-to-people contact. That's the best way to bring integration. Mandela did it, got a wife from Mozambique. That was people-to-people contact. So we did it. Thank you very much. But here's an important one. We need to move to a level where I don't buy one book. I buy 5 books to give to people as birthday presents or wedding presents or even corporate gifts. When I was on diplomatic posting, in the mission, I then changed this practice of giving our guests a bottle of South African wine. I said it's good, but the reality is that the person is going to drink this wine, throw that bottle in the bin. But if you give them a book, that book will sit in their bookshelves, in their office, or at home, and many more people, and his lineage will have access to that book, not a bottle of wine that they will drink and throw the bottle into the bin. So even with us, those who have entertainment budgets, buy this book. Usually I say to people, if you have never bought my book, I won't come to your lunch invitation. I say, buy my book. I'll come to, because I'm going to share with you what is in my book. For why? No, I don't want your alcohol. Buy my book, I'll come for your dinner. So even in that is, don't buy people alcohol. Give them a copy of the book, sign it. And if you are a big corporate, say if you buy 100 copies, Dr. Falala may even put you in the imprint page, generously supported by so and so, and you distribute it. So it will be a special print for you. Thank you very much.